Conspiracy theories have existed for as long as our human history. From the sacking of Rome to the assassination of public figures, humans find creative ways of explaining the unexplainable. Uncertainty is our biggest fear in life after all, and in times of crisis we turn to conspiracies because we find them reassuring and comforting. However, as much as we find these conspiracy theories convenient for us to stomach, the truth of the matter is that most of them are just that. Unfalsifiable conjectures. Often malicious actors spread misinformation through conspiracy theories. And at worst, they can also spread hateful ideas by exploiting uncertainties, fears, socioeconomic issues, and mental health disorders amongst vulnerable people. This predictably can lead to devastating results. Malaysia is no exception to this, and it's been this way for decades now. While I never went too deep into the conspiracy theory rabbit hole, I believe that I have some insight to contribute to the table. By making this video, I hope to try to convince those who still believe in conspiracy theories to change their mind. I've seen friends in school falling too deep into this rabbit hole many years ago. And I hope to prevent others from ending up in the same fate. The presence of conspiracy theories in Malaysia can be summarized into 3 points. 1. Conspiracy theories serve as a useful political tool in the 90s. 2. Feelings of disempowerment among Malaysians. And 3. The lack of publications debunking false conspiracy theories. For the sake of not wanting my door getting kicked down by you-know-who, I'll only discuss the second and third points. But first, let's talk a bit about how I got into this rabbit hole in the first place. I had my first exposure to conspiracy theories when I was still in primary school. The first conspiracy theory book I was introduced to was named Teori Konspirasi, Rahsia Yahudi dalam Film Hollywood sebagai Senjata Rahsia Illuminati. This book intrigued me because I remember seeing scores of students lining up to get their hands on that book from one of our classmates. Being this special kid that I am in school, I reasoned that it would be a perfect opportunity to fit in with the rest of the students. To be honest, I was afraid of missing out on hot new trends because I was desperate to find a group of friends to belong to. I didn't have anyone I could consider a friend that time, let alone a close one. I quickly became an outcast for my weird quirks, constantly getting bullied for it too. And so I thought to myself, why not have a common interest with the rest of the students? Eventually, I got a hold of that book, and I immediately read it the moment I got back home. It was a mind-blowing experience for the little old me. The book goes in depth with the many allegedly subliminal satanic messages in Hollywood movies and how it was used to achieve mind control. Then the book tries to shoehorn Pirates of the Caribbean with the story of Prophet Khidir and Lord of the Rings with Prophet Sulaiman's ring. At some point, the book decided to mention that Daniel Radcliffe is an atheist for some unknown reason. And to top it all off, Steven Spielberg got outed by this book as an active player of this Satan-worshipping global elite group. Yeah. With the power of hindsight, it's easy to look back and scoff at just how gullible I used to be. It may sound crazy now, but for a kid, everything about it felt believable. It's convincing enough for me to buy several more books delving into different kinds of conspiracy theories. Books like Art of Deception, Kiamat 2012, and Teori Konspirasi, Rothschild, Yahudi Kepercayaan Dajjal came to mind. Those books left a profound mark in my head back then. I just can't stop thinking about it, that I spent some of my free time talking about it with the rest of my classmates. Other times I took the opportunity to go to the school's library to read books that delve into the same themes. The experience felt like an eye-opener to me, not to mention that it chilled me to the bone. How can it not be? Knowing that the things we interact with was somehow connected in a sinister way without any of us realizing it. Each of these gears working together to bring about this penultimate conclusion of Armageddon itself. Or So I thought. Humans love patterns. In fact, we see them everywhere in the world around us. Our tendency to recognize patterns stems from our desire to impose structure on the world, important when making decisions, judgments, and acquire knowledge. However, our aversion to chaos and chance by finding meaningful patterns in everything will ultimately lead us to see things that don't exist. This phenomenon is called patternicity. Patternicity is important to us as humans because it's essential to our ancestors' survival and reproduction. To give you an example, consider a scenario in which you hear leaves rustling in the thicket. You'll start to assume that the tiger is nearby. Therefore, you ran away from the forest to save yourself from getting mauled alive by it. But wouldn't you know it, it's just a gust of wind. Now, let's switch gears and consider a different scenario. You now assume that the noise of the leaves rustling is nothing more than the wind. You went for that decision because you believed that your mind was playing tricks with you. But, oh no, it turns out that you're wrong and it's a full-blown tiger right behind you, ready for a kill. How unfortunate. Now you wouldn't be able to see the kids that Karen took from you. Based on the two scenarios given here, it's clear which option is preferable to humans. It's better to have a false positive than a false negative, because the former might just save your life. However, you may realize that our brains are not designed to distinguish between true and false patterns. We're just not good at estimating probabilities. Because the human cost of believing in most patterns being real is low compared to the contrary, we're ultimately stuck with this patternicity until today. And often this makes us see non-existent patterns or links between cause and effect. Conspiracy theories. All over the place.
If you guys tengok daripada atas, you guys, what do you see? The eye of Dajjal ke mata setan ke, you guys, ataupun you guys, if you guys suit you guys, the eye of horse. And that's it, from the very top new view. And this is in Malaysia there, you guys. Ini dekat Putrajaya. It's right there, you guys. And if you guys say, oh no, itu memang macam tu, how can you buat macam tu, you guys?
Princemeed Live needs no introduction. He's one of the most prominent YouTubers in Malaysia, incessantly peddling half-assed conspiracy theories to his younger audiences. When people make a connection between an individual's need for structure and a tendency to believe in conspiracy theories, Princemeed Live is a living embodiment of what they're referring to. But alas, his conspiracy theory on the Putrajaya International Convention Center, or PICC, simply falls flat. All he has to do to answer his suspicions on the PICC's architectural design is going to its Wikipedia page. That's all he has to do. It takes less than 10 seconds to get the answer he was looking for. There's no reason for someone his age and caliber to be so sorely inept in using a simple Google search. Just because it looks like Satan's eye from a distance doesn't mean that it is. Mind you, Putrajaya's planned architecture was made with Islam and a bit of traditional Malay aesthetics in mind. Unless you're trying to tell me that the city planners were somehow secretly part of the Illuminati, we can deduce that the shape of the PICC's roof is purely coincidental with that of an eye. This isn't the only time he made connections between two things that simply doesn't have any correlation whatsoever. He mentions other buildings, celebrities, and even TV shows before linking all of that to the Illuminati or something similar. This psychological phenomenon that he's exhibiting is what we call illusory correlation. Predictably, this phenomenon can have damaging implications on a systemic level, such as the propagation of false information, stereotypes, and even racism. Of course, this isn't the only drive behind the surge of popularity in conspiratorial thinking. There's more to it than simply seeing Virgin Mary on a toaster or seeing Satan's eye on roofs. Another thing about us humans is that we're not good at dealing with change very well. Change meant surprises, uncertainty, and most importantly, loss of control. In the face of the event in which the official explanation may not be adequate for some, our minds will start looking for more compelling answers to connect the dots. We have an unquenching desire to fill the gap in our minds of things we didn't know. To that end, we often cling onto an idea or a figure that can tell us what to think. And often, conspiracy theories were used to fill that gap. On the surface, it can provide explanations for events that seem confusing or frightening. Meanwhile, believers would have a reason to believe that they're being intentionally screwed or having their lives controlled against their will. However, explanations for most conspiracy theories are often not grounded with concrete evidence and were made from our genuine spite of not knowing anything. Having to come to terms we don't know why something happened and realizing that we're not actually in control is scary to many people. It's why conspiracy theorists find respite in a small, tight-knit community with similar beliefs as them. It's not a matter of ignorance or stupidity as much as it is about finding a sense of comfort and belonging in an ever-changing world. When you feel that you are constantly at the mercy of fate, it's natural for you to want to reclaim what was lost, your place in this world, and the power you used to wield in making a difference. Paradoxically, belonging to a community of conspiracy theorists didn't help them to gain a sense of empowerment. The opposite is true instead. And all of that was due to their belief that they were hopelessly controlled by an invisible yet powerful entity. This in turn only further increases feelings of anxiety and isolation among conspiracy theorists. While the motivation behind their beliefs in general is to challenge the New World Order, they often seek out information that already supports their preconceived biases rather than seeking out new information or challenging their beliefs. This obsession for closure and consistency led to many spending too much time dedicating themselves to conspiracy theories. Eventually, it would come to the point where some of them ignore relationships and responsibilities with the world outside this one, including doing something completely irrational. In Malaysia, conspiracy theories generally adhere to three essential components: this book, Illuminati, and Freemason. I'll try to debunk these core components as succinctly as possible because I couldn't afford to make this video longer than necessary. I'll link the supplementary sources down in the description below. Feel free to examine it at your own pace. Alright, let's start with the first point. This book is particularly famous among conspiracy theorists here for one simple reason. They believe that this book is proof that the Jews are inherently evil, hell-bent on world domination by manipulating the economy, controlling the media, and fostering religious conflict. However, the book has long been debunked as forgery way back in the 1920s. In fact, the book was plagiarized from another book from Maurice Joly entitled Dialogue in Hell between Machiavelli and Montesquieu. But none of that mattered for some people, especially religious zealots, as they still reference the book to justify blind hatred against Jewish people in general. Meanwhile, the Freemasonry are nothing more than just frat houses for rich boys. Men from all walks of life can join the Freemasons so long as they have two friends who can initiate you into their society. Contrary to what many conspiracy theorists in Malaysia would like to believe, they're not a secret society. They don't talk about politics nor religion in their lodge. Non-believers and atheists are not allowed. And more importantly, they're not a satanic cult that does satanic rituals. The Freemasonry was often confused with the Illuminati, simply because some Illuminati members recruited many members in Europe through Freemason lodges since the 18th century. And speaking of which, what about the Bavarian Illuminati? Well, they didn't exist anymore, and even if they did, their core principles are anything but nefarious. Their core principles were to spread secularism, reason, and philanthropy among future leaders, all of which served the purpose of fueling the Age of Enlightenment in Europe during the 18th century. However, their intentions of opposing religious and elitist influence over daily life in Bavaria were proven too much for the conservative Christian critics during this time. The Bavarian Illuminati's presence only lasted for 9 years, when they were eventually outlawed by the Duke of Bavaria, along with the rest of the secret societies in that region. Those who tried reviving the latter in recent times are only doing it as a money-making scheme. If there's one key takeaway from the Bavarian Illuminati, it's that they were closer to revolutionaries than world rulers. And the elites back then were particularly not fond of that. Now, let's address the elephant in the room here. If these conspiracy theories are that easy to debunk, why is it still popular? And why does it seem like there's no effort made to counter these false narratives? Well, as it turns out, we do have some pushback against it. Unfortunately, books that debunk famous conspiracy theories in Malaysia are few and far in between. For each passing year, conspiracy theory books dominated the bookshelves in the likes of Popular and MPH. And unfortunately, selling books that aim to counter conspiracy theories here are simply infeasible due to its lack of demand in bookstores. There doesn't seem to be a way to quench the public's appetite for conspiracy theories, especially to younger demographics who are more susceptible to these stories. However, this isn't to say that all avenues were exhausted to educate the public on this. If physical books are not enough, maybe what we need is to bring those points to the medium they knew best. I stayed in this pipeline until I was 16 years old. I have to admit, I didn't stay as long as some other people that I used to know. And I didn't get out of it because I finally wisened up or anything. As I said, I was lucky to have somebody that pulled me out from all of this, specifically the skeptic community on YouTube. Initially, I was afraid of letting it all go just like that. After all, it was one of the few bridges that I have connecting myself with the rest of my peers. Burning it all down would mean that I'm all alone again. Eventually, I realized that it would be a great insult to myself to base my self-worth on appeasing a bunch of short-term friends. Why seek validation from those people when there are always people out there who can accept you for who you are, despite being in a spectrum? As I matured throughout the years, I value reason and explanations from experts a lot more than I did back then. It can be a bitter pill to swallow at first, realizing that you're wrong for so many years. But it goes to show that some things we believe in aren't as accurate as some may hype it up to be. And that's okay. It's not impossible to reverse course and eventually get out of this pipeline before it's too late. And if you're a conspiracy theorist that managed to stick around until the end, thank you. You proved yourself to be better than a lot of people who are just like you. You're inquisitive and honest critical thinkers, willing to spend time listening to the evidence I've presented in this video. Even if you're wrong, I don't think you're crazy. And honestly, we need more people who are just like you. It's a good thing to question authority and explore different avenues for an explanation. But I do believe that we could use that energy on something more meaningful and productive. Thank you so much for watching this video. Things have been quite busy in the university recently. I do try my best to make videos for you guys, but having to do research, write scripts, recording, and editing videos all by myself is not particularly easy. Which is why I'm very grateful with the support you've given to me thus far. We're so close to 40,000 subscribers now, and I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's been a joy for me to make videos for all of you, and I want to push myself to do better. And I would like to thank my supporters on Patreon, especially to my $10 patrons, Hladan Beton, Cataries, NGB, Bunkyatku, and Zahar. If you would like to support my channel, Patreon is the best place to do so. If you have a spare change at the end of the month, do consider supporting me there. Thank you. And also, do consider subscribing to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. It only takes one click, and you can always unsubscribe at any time you want. Thank you. As always, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.